Today I'm at Huddersfield Golf Club and I'm going to be testing out the new Cobra Radspeed drivers. I'm going to be seeing how the different ones perform compared to each other and also how they perform compared to last year's Speedzone models. There are three new drivers in the Radspeed range. First up, the Radspeed is for those high clubhead swing players who want to be able to get fast ball speeds but also get that low spin and control their trajectory. We then have the Radspeed XB. It's still for players who want more distance, but they're also looking for that forgiveness when they maybe strike it off centre and they need that extra stability. Finally, we have the Radspeed XD. This is still going to give you that forgiveness and distance of the other models, but it's just designed to be more draw biased. So I've got the Radspeed and the Radspeed XB here, and the big differences straight off in terms of aesthetics is very much on the crown. With the Radspeed XB, it's got a gloss finish, whereas with the Radspeed we've now got a matte finish. So this is different to last year's Speedzone's offerings, which just came in the gloss finish. Now I'm a bit torn here because usually I love a gloss finish on a driver head, but the matte finish here just looks so good. I think it really kind of calms down the club head and just doesn't make it look as busy. As is usually the case with Cobra drivers, there are a lot of different elements on the crown of this club, but I have to say with the matte finish, I actually really do like the aesthetic of this. Another big thing that stands out to me this year is the fact that the Cobra logo on the top is now white rather than coloured, and I think from an alignment point of view, this really just stands out more. Again, we've got the infinity face coming over the top onto the crown here, and I really do like this as an alignment aid, but again I would say it does just look a bit better on the matte finish compared to the gloss. I have to say, the engraving on the club face is definitely improved this year. They've pulled out the centre of the club face with a brighter, whiter engraving, and I think it just really stands out nice and gives you that extra feedback over the ball of where the centre of the club face is. In terms of feel, I would say this is pretty similar to the Speedzone last year. I'm not going to lie, in terms of feel it is a little bit on the dull side for me, but I would say in terms of overall build, I really like the stock shaft we've got in this year, and it feels like a really nice well-balanced club. Okay, before we go into the performance, I just want to touch a little bit on the tech here. The new Radspeed driver utilises radial weighting, and this is all about getting the weight at the front and the back of the club head as far away from each other as possible. This does mean, however, that we need weight savings in other areas, so this club head has a new T-bar speed chassis, which saves 7 grams of weight, and it's also got an improved carbon fibre crown, which saves a further 6 grams. This just means Cobra can redistribute the weight into the best possible places to improve the performance. So initially I started my testing with the stock shafts in these clubs, but after a while I just felt like I wasn't getting the most out of them, so I switched into a blue 10 size shaft, which Cobra had also provided me with, which is definitely more in my specs, and instantly I saw an increase in performance, gaining over 6 yards, so it just shows you how important it is to get the right setup. So with these two models, the Radspeed is meant to be the most low spinning and give you a more controlled trajectory. Then the Radspeed XB is meant to be the longest of the two and also more forgiving. So I made sure to use the same shaft when I was testing both of these just for consistency. I have to say, when I was testing both of these, the data was pretty similar, and I actually hit the Radspeed further by a grand total of 1.4 yards. To be honest, I was pretty happy with the carry distances with both of these. I was averaging 222 yards with the Radspeed and then 220.6 with the Radspeed XB. I have to say though, I did hit my longest shot of the test at 229 yards with the Radspeed XB, so maybe as I test this for longer throughout the season I will find that this goes further. My spin was also extremely similar between the two models. It actually only varied by 1 RPM on average. But I did have my lowest spinning shot with the Radspeed at 1,853 RPM. One of the most ridiculous things I noticed when testing these, my ball speed was exactly the same for every single shot I hit with the Radspeed driver. At 136 miles per hour, this was literally ridiculous. I can't believe it was the same for every shot. Having said that, the XB was pretty consistent too, and it only varied by 3 miles per hour across the sample. So my clubhead speed didn't vary too much. It was actually slightly up with the XB compared to the regular model, and I did actually register my fastest speed with the XB at 94.4 miles per hour. Okay, but everyone wants to know, how does this compare to the Speedzone range? Now, personally, I've compared this against the Speedzone Extreme. This was the model that I preferred the most and I fit into the best. I also hit it the best, so I think it's best to compare against this model. Now again, I used the same tensile shaft when I was testing with the Speedzone Extreme. It was quite interesting because straight away my club head speed was slightly down, and this was reflected in both my ball speed and my carry distance. I actually averaged 214.4 yards with the Speedzone Extreme, which was 6 yards shorter than the XB and 8 yards shorter than the Radspeed, so definitely seeing an increase in distance with the new technology this year. Now obviously extra distance is great, but I think the biggest takeaway for me was just how consistent the speed and the distance were with the new models. They also both launched slightly lower too. I did find the Speedzone launch quite high, so there was definitely something I preferred. And between the two models, we did actually see that the regular Radspeed launched the lowest. In terms of dispersion, I could definitely notice the difference between the models. The XB just felt easier to control, and this was reflected in my dispersion, which was a lot more consistent. It also just felt easier to start online, and I have to say compared to last year's Speedzone offering, it felt a bit more neutral. I felt last year like I could really lose these to the right sometimes, and although I wouldn't say by any means these are kind of left biased, I would say they're definitely not as right biased as we saw in last year's offering. Another big thing in terms of forgiveness is the spin consistency. I did find this was better in the XB across a variety of strikes, which is really going to help you out on the course. Overall, I would have to say, although I prefer the matte aesthetic of the Radspeed model, and it did go slightly further, the dispersion and the extra forgiveness and consistency of the XB would make it my favourite model out of the two. Right, those are my first impressions of the Radspeed range, and I have to say I am super impressed so far. I really do think there is a significant upgrade from last year's Speedzone offering, and for me I guess the biggest takeaway was some of the new aesthetics and the matte, and I really kind of wish they'd brought that across the whole range. If you're after more Cobra content, make sure you keep your eye on our channel this week as I run through the rest of the Radspeed range. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, and if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We've got more golf content over on the National Club Golfers social media channels, and don't forget to come back here at 8 PM tomorrow for our next review in the Radspeed range.